And to begin with, let's welcome our chairman for the session, Mr. Shivadas Menon, onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Shivadas Menon with a round of applause. And now, let's welcome Mr. C.P. John, Member, Planning Board, Government of Kerala. Welcome, sir. And let's welcome Mr. Harikrishna Nair, Charter Member, TiE Kerala. The round of applause. Welcome, sir. And finally, let's welcome Mr. Kiran Diokar, Technical Manager, KF Bioplants Private Limited. Hearty welcome, sir. Before inviting Shivadas Menon, sir, for the opening remarks, may I quickly take you through his profile. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Shivadas B. Menon is Managing Director of Sterling Farm Research and Services Private Limited. An agricultural engineer by profession, he worked for highly reputed agri-tech companies like Amalgamation Group, Showalis and Company Limited, and Pierce Leslie India Limited for almost 2 decades before forming Sterling Group in 1988. Today, Sterling Group is a leading exporter of agri-tech products apart from catering to domestic requirements. Shivadas Menon is former president of TiE and also a past chairman of CII, Kerala, and headed various committees in the organization. His area of interest include agri-inputs, food and other agricultural products, testing and agri-project consultancy. Now let's welcome our chairman of the session, Mr. Shivadas Menon, for the opening remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. I'm so happy to see you all here. I was a little worried with all, very interesting programs going on in the other sector, whether you would avoid me here. But now I realize that you all given enough sort of an importance for agriculture, food processing. I'll tell you, that's very important. Let's all work together to produce more wealth as well as food so that we don't have to starve on a later day. Yeah, let me now start. I would invite, and first to start with Kiran. Kiran will be talking about cash crops, new cash crops for Kerala. It's very interesting. We have been only totally depending upon tea, coffee, cardamom, and other vegetables and all that. Let us now make money. Now, like strawberries, roses, or carnation, let's listen to him. Kiran, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kiran Diokar is MSc Agriculture in Plant Pathology by qualification. He has experience in research as a Senior Research Fellow, 3 years in screening of grape varieties against downy mildew and extraction of genes of grape varieties, National Research Center for Grapes, Pune. He has worked in private firm of oyster mushroom production for 1 year. In tomato biotechnology ad hoc project, he has worked as Senior Research Fellow for screening and analysis of tomato varieties against tomato spotted wilt virus in Mahatma Phule Agriculture University, Maharashtra. He is currently working as a technical manager in KF Bioplants Private Limited. His areas of expertise are strawberry production, technical and marketing, polyhouse vegetable, color capsicum, tomato, beef and cherry, and cucumber technical, floriculture crops like greenhouse, gerbera, carnation, and gypsophila technical, potato breeding, research and development. And so please give a presentation. Thank you.
Respected members on the dais, Mr. Nair, John sir, Menon sir, all charter members, delegates, and the friends. Good morning and welcome to this presentation, New Cash Crops for Kerala. I have divided this presentation in 3 parts for the convenience. We'll see first what is the KF Bioplant, its structure, working as a pan-India. Then we'll see a little bit about the Indian scenario of present floriculture. Then we'll go to the potential of different crops in Kerala. This KF Bioplant is a basically tissue culture hardened plants providing biotechnology company, which is a joint venture of Kumar and Florist from Holland. We have established the networking among every layer of farmers since last 20 years as a quality supplier of planting material, and along with that also the technical backup to the farmers at every stage. We have the world class and the professional setup, which is ad measuring 10 hectares in a 3 locations in Pune. It is a Pune based company. We support online, technical and other issues to the farmers in the country, because we have 25 qualified, more than that, the personnel in India spread all over in India. Uh, we have every technical come marketing executives in every area of India, which are the mostly from agriculture background. This technical backup is the main strength of KF, on the base of which we have completed 20 years in the India. You can see now this, we went with the 30,000 plant in 1993 to 6 million plant sale in 2011. This speaks about the KF strength in the domestic floriculture industry, and then it gives the profile of the company. We have set the records for supplying, handling of different crops, which includes the floriculture, vegetables, and fruit crops, in which floriculture you will see the gerbera, carnation, gypsophilia, then vegetables, all are the exotic, the polyhouse protected cultivation crops, in which the colored capsicum, then cucumber, then tomato, especially it is a cherry tomato, and along with that also we have the strawberry plant as a fruit crop. We started last 3-4 years. We'll see now the lab status in the cave. We have the state of the art of plant tissue culture laboratory, which has almost 10,000 square meters, centrally air conditioned, energy efficient, highly hygienic, and the world class infrastructure. Where we have almost 550 technicians, which produces these ornamentals, the vegetables and forestry crop in the lab, where we have 22 fully growth chambers which can hold 10 to 15 million plants at one time. There is also the professional systems, world-class systems such as a barcoding, which can maintain this integrity of varieties of every crop from the initial stage of laboratory to delivery to the client. We have, for these all crops, we have the joint venture with the all world renowned companies, mainly from the Europe. We have this joint venture for the gerbera, Floris, Diquaquel, then Hilberdaco is for the carnation, Danziger for the gypsophilia. Then we have the joint venture with the Rijkswaan, Holland for the vegetables, and the roses, Rosenthal from Germany. This is our the facility or main office in the Pune. We have these greenhouses with the all facility, all control conditions. Now we'll see how we produce these plants or harden the plants in our facility in the cave, where we have 100% control conditions with this energy screen, then the movable benches, fan pad cooling system, this heating system, irrigation, then automatic fertigation system is also there, which is run and looked after by this qualified management, professional management. For that also it is a basic thing we require. This is a quality mother plant stock, which is coming from well-known breeders from these companies. What I mentioned in the last slide, this is a Florist, Hilberdaco, this is Rosenthal and Rijkswaan. This is the facility where we have almost 4 hectares greenhouses. We harden the plants of gerbera like this in our greenhouses, which will be delivered to the client. Then Phalaenopsis. This is the carnation hardening unit where we supply the rooted cuttings of the carnations. These are the plants of carnations. Then comes it's a strawberry. We supply this rooted strawberry. Now the mainly area is in Maharashtra, and we started in Kerala also, where with the help of the government, State Horticulture Mission, we have supplied almost 1 million plants in the Kerala. This is the facility for providing locally plants with the refrigerated vans. Along with that, we just do not supply the plants and the technical backup, but for the new varieties, new species, and the new crops, we conduct our trial on our demo houses round the year. We standardize it for everything from the cultivation point of view and the quality of the end product. We supply all these flowers to the different markets in India. We take the feedback from them and we mark them as a prominent variety which will do well in Indian condition, and then those varieties will be released in the next year, coming years for the client. These are the demo houses where we take every data required for the flowers, the vegetables, and the strawberries. This is the carnation demo house where we conduct our trials. Carnations, Gypsophilia. This is a very good for feeler in a bouquet, and which is a very hardy plants which can do well in a Indian conditions also. Now we will see as a KF as a global supplier. We supply plants all over India also. Apart from that, we supply almost 27 countries, which includes this Netherlands, Australia, USA, Asian countries, and for that we have registered with the NAC from Holland, Equus, Australia, USA, and other for various quarantine national agency. Along with that, also we supply the new species which will do well, varieties, and the innovative practices to the farmers from the point of planting till the harvesting of the products. We visit all our farmers' project. Once in a month, we give them the fertigation, spray, and other cultural operations on the report. And meanwhile, if some issue comes, so he can call us, the farmers can call us, he can send the photographs by mail, WhatsApp, and we can advise them, we can suggest them the solutions. Now the second part comes, it's an Indian scenario for the floriculture. Yeah. This is the potential area for different crops in India. Those are marked with a green star. But along with that also the other parts is coming up for the protected cultivation crops. Now if you see the Indian horticulture database, in 2001 and 2, it was just for the, if you see the figures for the flowers, it was 53 million plants lose in a number sale. Then it goes increasing, and if you see in the 2011, it was almost 103 million flowers sold in that year concerning about these flowers. For this, if you see the major flower markets, this is the for the protected cultivation crops I am talking about, protected cultivation of this Gerbera carnation. And in that you will see these are the major markets where these flowers are consumed. If you see the Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, they are the major consumption. and this other areas have the little bit which contributes 100% in a total. Now you see this gerbera cutting. I am talking about this gerbera because this is the new cash crop will for the Kerala also. If you see the quantity wise, these are the figures for the required cuttings in India state-wise. If you see this, Maharashtra is a 3 million, which accounts for the 35%. Karnataka is major, then Gujarat, and then other states coming up. For this carnation also, you see Tamil Nadu is there, Himachal, Uttarakhand. Because of the cool weather, cool and dry period, it's required for the carnation growing. So you will see the differences, the state-wise. In Gerbera it was Maharashtra and other. Now it's coming up Tamil Nadu, Himachal, Uttarakhand, and this Bangalore area also. Now we'll go for the third part. This is the potential of different crops in Kerala. Kerala is known as a God's own country, which has Arabian Sea on the western side and the Western Ghats towering almost more than 2000 meter elevation on the eastern side, which has a fantastic climatic conditions where if you see, which is divided in 14 districts, and if you see the topography or altitude wise, the last three districts, Idukki, this Wayanad, those are coming with the high altitude of more than 500 to 2000 meter altitude, where the tea and coffee plantation is done. So in the world it is known, the area where you can grow this coffee and tea, you can grow for this strawberry, roses and carnation also, provided that the cool and dry period. And the other area you can think about for this carnation, vegetables, gerbera and the gypsophila. If you see the area wise, these all other districts you can go for the gerbera, gypsophila, and these three districts area where the high altitude area is there, you can go for this carnation, gypso and strawberry. Now for the gerbera, if you see the profitability statement, where these figures are from the Maharashtra and the other area, we have calculated on an average. If you see the sales figure, which includes the 560 square meter area, which can hold around 3000 plants, 6 plants per square meter. And if you see the sale figures and this the other total expenses, you can come in the last figure, average DSCR ratio 1.9. So this crop gives almost 2.6 rupees per flower average price throughout the year. In the peak period, it will go above 5-10 rupees per flower also. But if you can calculate it average overall the year period, it comes around 2.6 rupees. Now for strawberry it is mainly the open cultivation, not protected cultivation. This is the for open cultivation. The figures are calculated on average basis, taking considering the area of Maharashtra. If you see the production wise, it gives around 500 grams fruits per plant. It can go up above that also, but we take it for lower side or for economic purpose. So you can see that profit goes around 1,91,000 from 1 acre area. So if you see for the Kerala as an emerging area, you can have this floriculture, gerbera, carnation, gypso in a protected cultivation and strawberry in the open cultivation. We have supplied almost 1 million plants strawberry in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kiran. I think it's time for us to think out of the box and go for new cash crops in Kerala. It has been tried last year, 1 million, first we tried 1.5 lakhs plants by the strawberries in Idukki. The farmers were able to get about 150 rupees per kilo That means it comes to per acre, it comes to almost about 18 lakhs. You know, it's a big money. And you don't have to have greenhouse farming there. Straight away in the field you can cultivate, provide with a little technology like covering the ridges with polythene so that you don't soil the fruits. Like protected cultivation, of course, there are a lot of opportunity for flower cultivation. And why this protected cultivation? You know, there is some technology involved in that. You are trapping the carbon dioxide. You know, what is being produced in the night in the process of respiration, that carbon dioxide is utilized in the daytime for photosynthesis. In Europe, where, you know, like places like Eastern Europe, when in winter the temperature comes down to minus 21 degrees, they got to put on the artificial lighting system by about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They use gas lights, the extra gas, additional gas, the waste gas is pumped into the greenhouse so that carbon dioxide concentration enhances, and that would help in producing more crop. It's a very profitable thing. The flower culture has come to Kerala, in India also. For, you know, we don't now carry fruits when you go and see a patient in a hospital. We carry flowers. So there is good opportunity. I think we should time for us to go in for non-plantation crops also, not to ignore plantation crops, along with that additional cropping system. Thank you, Kiran. Thank you very much. Yeah, plants were cultivated this year.
If you see the worldwide, this is the huge area in the world cultivated under the strawberry cultivation. In India, it is a 14,000, and in Maharashtra, it goes around 1,500 acre. If you see the requirement of in Maharashtra only, it is 30 million plants per year. I will have some these clips for you just to get an impression of the strawberry.
It's not connected.
Okay.
Please connect.
Yeah, these are the figures for this world, as well as India and Maharashtra. The acreage under the cultivation of this strawberry.
In fact, this has been done by the State Horticulture Mission, and Dr. Pradhaban is in Pune today. They are planning to have over 250 acres of strawberry cultivation in Kerala by coming 2 years, and they are also setting up a processing plant. And you would be surprised to see, or be pleasant surprised to see refrigerated vans moving around in the major cities selling strawberries. Strawberries grown in our God's own country.
So these are the clips from the Indian conditions. You see the planting of the strawberry plants, then lying with this mulching paper. Sometimes the farmers go mulching before planting, sometimes they go mulching after planting. According to the climatic condition, if it is raining after planting, then they go mulching after 30 days after planting.
The mulching helps to reduce the usage of water, can stop weed totally, so you save a lot of fertilizer, and you get fresh, nice fruits.
Those fruits will not come in contact with the soil also, so that will save the fruit quality also. These are the fruiting stage of the strawberry plants. Now the harvesting, they harvest in a tray, crates. Those are packed according to size. Grading will be done according to size also. So for the grading, they use the jumbo above 35 grams, first, second and third. And they use punnet, which is called 250 grams per punnet. They will pack the fruits, and 8 punnets will be in a one box, and those 7 box will be in a one jota or corrugated packing. These are the punnets used for the packing of the strawberry fruits. These are the boxes where the punnets are placed. Different packing condition in other countries. These are the plants produced at KF Bioplants. The pack in a boxes for the local and as well as the long distance. the growth of the strawberry plants in the field. We gave them support, technical backup to the farmers by taking, you can say, the seminars, presentation, discussions on the field, as well as at a company side. We conduct technical seminars also.
CP John is a member, Planning Board, Government of Kerala. May I quickly take you through his profile? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. C.P. John is an eminent progressive thinker, economic development expert, political strategist, and organizational genius, particularly in the complex situation of coalition politics. He has a public life which now spans through over 3 decades. It started his public life as a student leader of Students' Federation of India in the early 70s. He succeeded in infusing in the student community purposeful union activities. His focus was on improving the quality of education with youth involvement. Towards this aim, proposals were made, the initiatives, and he undertook the highly commended. He coined the slogan, "Provide industry, provide job," which could make a qualitative change in the mindset of both the youth and the decision makers. This was a distinct contribution he made as the president of Socialist Youth Federation. To someone who had held positions such as state secretary and state president for 7 years, the new responsibility was a logical offshoot. At the national level, he was able to effect a qualitative change in the functioning of this radical student movement by infusing positive perceptions. What distinguishes this work and personality is the holistic approach he has towards life. Instead of adopting a unifocal vision, he regulates an enriched multifocal vision of Indian society and the myriad problems it faces. Now may I request Mr. C.P. John for his presentation. Thank you.
I don't think that sort of introduction is required for Mr. John. He's known, let me talk. And he can speak on any subject. I've heard him talking. And I especially requested him to give importance to dairy farming, dairy cattle. Mr. John.
It looks like my obituary note. So, dear Shivadas Menon, dear Kiran from Pune, Mr. Nair, dear friends who have gathered here, and really when I came here I thought, as Shivadas Menon said, there will not be too many takers for agriculture and dairy sector, but fortunately I find it, this hall is rather full with listeners, very important listeners, including Mr. Paul and Narayan, listening to me and I am only concentrating on dairy sector. Sri, without wasting time, I shall go to some statistics. Statistics is my bread and butter. So I am not wasting time mentioning any of the pleasantries generally we do. See what is the present milk production of our country and milk production of our state. As far as India is concerned, our milk production is 129 million ton, which is the highest in the world. And fortunately or unfortunately, Chinese are not drinking milk because of their intestinal problem. Narayan knows better. They are not interested in drinking milk because their intestine is not designed for drinking too much milk. So they have not touched that sector. At least one sector they have not touched. So we are the biggest, and we have crossed the production of the total European, total production of Europe put together, and even the United States. That's a great achievement as far as milk production is concerned. But what about Kerala? This is my discussion point. But again, I shall talk to you later about the Indian production in comparison with our Kerala production system. In Kerala, we had only 2 lakh tons of milk 50 years ago. We think that we had too many things 50 years ago, and we think that our agriculture was so robust compared to the present system, but unfortunately it's a misconception. We had only 2 lakh tons, not million, 2 lakh tons. India is producing 129 million tons, not lakh tons. Don't confuse with million and ton, a million and lakh. So our production also only 2 lakh tons. Now recently we have touched 27 lakh tons. But unfortunately, after attaining 24 million tons few years ago, 10 years ago, we dropped our production to 21 million tons. It was a negative growth during the 10th plan period. At that time also I was a member of the planning board in charge of dairy, so I have to be self-critical about it. However, it grew up again. Now we have touched 27 lakh tons of milk in Kerala. But according to us, according to the calculations, we have to have at least 35 lakh tons. We can consume more, but we can produce 35 lakhs. So what is the difference? Difference is 5 plus 3, 8 lakhs. This is a simple calculation. I am not saying blah blah. So the point is, we have a space to grow 8 lakh tons more. It's that simple. Then what to do? That is a strategy. So there is a scope for expansion of milk production, and again, comparing our per capita availability of milk. I am only comparing the southern states. I shall read regarding per capita availability of milk in 2010-11. Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Andhra Pradesh ranks first with availability of 364 grams per day. Tamil Nadu is 278. Kerala is the lowest with 210. So per capita availability of milk in Kerala is only 210 grams. Then you may be thinking, what is the national average? It is 280 grams. But don't compare it with Haryana and Punjab. You know better. Our KFC chairman has come. It is nearly 1 kilogram. They have nearly 1 kilogram, 900 grams per day for Haryana and Punjab. Gujarat, it is 380, only 380 grams. Okay, thank you. So I'm just showing this this paper to you. Recently, our Kerala State Planning Board has uploaded a draft perspective plan for 2030. So I'm talking on that basis. So this is the 6th chapter of 2030 perspective plan. You can find it, you just type perspective plan 2030, then Kerala will follow. That much hit it has. So perspective plan 2030 I propose today also. You just discuss it later. But however, we have discussed at length about too many areas where we can do specific things in a specific manner. So this is the 6th chapter of 2030. I am not reading all, but just I shall show how we are looking at the whole problem. So we think that at 2030, Kerala can produce at least 35 to 40 lakh tons of milk. This is our target. So we have well targeted it. And before going to the targets, I shall show you how we are positioned in the national dairy sector. Just to show you the graph. You can look at this graph. I think you can see it. Okay, is it clear? You can look at this graph. Okay. You see the cattle strength, trends in livestock population. This trend in cattle population is negative. You see the crossbred, it is -6%. But don't be too much worried about the reduction of what you call the population, because UP has the highest percentage of cattle, but their per capita availability of milk is much lower than Punjab and Haryana. But unfortunately, look at the buffalo. Buffalo, the one that is negative, goats is positive, and pigs is negative. So the population of our livestock, though it is negative, even in the negative trend, we can make more milk. So the point is, this is the head count of the livestock is not the matter. The matter is the quality of the milk and quality of the cattle, and the availability of milk from a cattle. We have 7 liters, 7 kilogram. We are putting it in kilogram wise. We have 7 kilograms per day by average from the crossbreed good cows. But our indigenous cows are giving only 2 kilograms. So again, the point is, if we are looking at bringing more milk or making more milk, you have to look at non-indigenous varieties in Kerala. So it can be internationally known HF or any other variety of from European plain. But you can have our Gujarat, Gir, Mura. I shall come to the buffalo, Gir or any other Indian variety. So the point is, we have to have a good stock of non-Kerala or indigenous stock. This is number one. So there's a dispute in this regard. Some people are saying that we have to grow more Vechur cow or Mangalapuram cow, Kasaragod cow. Well and good. A Vechur cow is a good pet cow. Recently I heard that a industrialist bought a cow for 2 lakhs rupees. Well and good. So it can be a pet cow model. For producing more milk, you have to have another cow. So we can have our indigenous varieties kept in our showcase, and of course that genoplasm is very important. But for a dairy purpose, for a business purpose, for entrepreneur purpose, enterprise, you have to have good varieties, either from Europe or from Punjab or from Gujarat or from Punjab, Haryana area, including Pakistan. Look at this graph, percentage share of national livestock population. Kerala is the last. You can see the Kerala is the last with the population. Our population is just behind Uttarakhand. And interestingly, for your information, Assam has got more population than us. You can see Assam, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 from the last. But in Assam, interestingly, in Assam, per capita availability of milk is only 71 grams. 71 grams is the lowest in the country. But we have 210 grams with this much low population. So don't think of increasing the population, but will eat more grass and drink more water. So this is very, very important. So have as low number of cattle and have maximum quantity of milk. This is the strategy. And you can look at the Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh percentage of share is the highest. Percent of 2003, 2007. Blue is 2003 and red is 2007. Andhra Pradesh. But look at Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh is increasing. You can see the red line. In 2003, Andhra Pradesh was below 10. But now look at Andhra Pradesh, it is nearly 12 or 11.6. So the growth of dairy sector in Andhra Pradesh is amazing. You can see that trend. But you look at Gujarat. Gujarat is a state, middle state of above 4%. And again in Haryana, Punjab. You look at Haryana and Punjab, population is very low. Livestock population is very low. You can see Haryana is near us, isn't it? Yeah, I think you have a. Yeah, you can see any pointer. Okay, no problem. You can see Haryana is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth from the last. But what is the per capita availability in Haryana? It is nearly 1 kilogram. So this is the rationale. So you have the highest number of population in Uttar Pradesh and a very moderate quantity of population or livestock population in Haryana and Punjab. And Haryana and Punjab is very near to us. You see it is below 2. So this is very interesting. So don't look at more cows. Have a moderate number of cows having maximum quantity of milk. This is my first point. Second thing is farm size category wise, which is unfortunately, you can read the 6.2. Farm size category wise ownership of livestock in Kerala, you need not worry about it, it's our worry. You can see that very small farmers are doing the whole thing. You look at the first column, cattle. Marginal, below 1 hectare, the only very poor farmers, they are holding the 87% stock. I'm not talking to that crowd today. So you have to find there's a big space for you. This is a business model. In 2030, we are talking about agripreneurs. We are not talking about farmers. There will be farmers, but there will be peasants. So Kerala is getting de-peasantized quickly. This is a place where de-peasantization ratio is very high. Even people who are settled in the Western Ghats, they are coming down to Cochin to buy a flat and live here. So they are getting quickly de-peasantized. Nothing wrong in it. All developed countries have de-peasantized as they could. Even in Japan, in the West, de-peasantation is a mode of development. But even when you are getting de-peasantized, don't forget about the farm. So we have to be reformed and de-peasantized. So how to be reformed and de-peasantized is the discussion as far as this room is concerned. So there's a big space for you to reforming Kerala in a very, very modern manner, but not in the peasant mode. Yes, we will be supporting peasants in any way as far as planning board is concerned, government is concerned, but as far as this room is, this crowd is concerned, you need not bother about the peasant. We will look after the peasant. But you have a good space to grow as a business model, as an entrepreneur. So this is the level of the category of farm category, 86, 87%. You look at goats, 92% is very poor people are rearing goats. So I think my time is running out. And then next thing I am talking about share of crossbreed livestock. Forget about it, I don't have time to do it. So this is the first part of my presentation is over. And second part of my presentation goes to how to get a cow. High yielding cow. Any cow. Even your low yielding, how you buy a cow. You can buy you can put it that, this internet, this thing. You can buy a motorcycle, second-hand motorcycle, second-hand, bullet motorcycle costs nearly 3 lakhs rupees now. But how to buy a cow? You have so many things in our country. Yes, this is a good idea. Yes. This is from which country? Yes. This is a site for cattle ranging, cattle rearing, not from India. So whenever you look at cattle trade, you can see so many websites, but unfortunately none from India. Yes, slowly, so for example, one person is doing it, a Sargent Dairy Farm. I don't know whether anybody of you knowing it, Sargent Dairy Farm. Recently, one buffalo was sold. Can you guess the maximum price of a buffalo? Huh? 6 lakhs is a good price. Exactly. 25 lakhs. In Haryana, one farmer sold its buffalo for 25 lakhs. So slowly in northern India, this is happening. This has been happening for some time. Unfortunately, not in South India. So this is cattle breeding and cattle trading. Today, my real point is that. What about cattle breeding and cattle trading? This is a big market opportunity. Wherever you go, even though Europe is decentralized, they are making good farms and breeding centers. Even America is decentralized in a big manner. Only 3% persons are available in United States. What happened to this form? Okay, okay. They are doing big business in milk and milk products. So my point is, cattle breeding and cattle trading. This is a big opportunity. So how to trade the cattle? What you are doing? Again, recently I had an opportunity to speak my profile. My life is nothing but speaking. I'm not doing anything other than speaking. Recently, I had an opportunity to make a memorial lecture of Varghese Kurian in Calicut. Then I took up this idea. Fortunately, Times of India reported it, and unfortunately, no Malayalam paper reported it. They are not bothered about cattle. But Times of India reported it, and again in Calicut, northern Myanmar, they have developed a software called Cattle Soft. That's for your information, Cattle Soft. So slowly we are giving UID number, so-called, to all cattle, newly born. Let the old one live for 10 or 12 years more. So from next year or within 2 years, we are thinking about identifying the cattle on the moment when it is born. So we have given an instruction to the local governments to enroll each and every calf on the moment when it is born. Within 7 days, it has to be reported in the nearest veterinary hospital. In Kerala, for your information, all Grama Panchayats are having one veterinary hospital. So our infrastructure is intact in a way. In a way, it is intact. So quality-wise, we have to improve a lot. But my point is, next year or within 2 years, each and every village will be having a cattle register on the moment when it is born. So you have to fix it with a electronic electronic tag. So you have to tag the animal when it is growing, and you can have a portal of cattle trade, and you have to make the whole population within 5 or 10 years. Every cattle, every cow, every buffalo will be tagged on the year, and you can see where this cattle stands, where this cow stands. In my room, in my home, or in your home. So it can be properly located. It's vaccination, this thing, it's health condition, everything can be seen. You can see even its photograph on the computer. So on the one side, we are trying to improve the quality of the cattle population in a very, very technology friendly manner, number one. Number two, we like to promote cattle breeders. That is your subject. You need not make milk. You need not make 10,000 liters of milk every day and selling it in the market. This gentleman is making pigs, isn't it? He is breeding pigs. He is not even eating pigs, I think. Yeah, you do very good. I'm a good pork eater. So the point is, I shall come to you. However, we need not make milk. People think that if you breed a cattle, then you have to milk it. Then you have to sell the milk. Yes, you sell the cattle per se. You can even export. Big business. And recently there was a call from Saudi Arabia. They are asking me, can Kerala export 10 lakh, 1 million goats for sacrifice in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca? Can you imagine? Millions of goats are sacrificed. You can't take meat. You have to take the goat. It's an opportunity for you. So the point is, breeding is a big business. Don't think about cow in terms of milk alone. Your entrepreneurs can start breeding centers and farmers will buy the cow from you and they will make milk and we will buy the milk back by the cooperative societies and will make milk products. Again, you can buy back the milk and make milk products. So again, this is my last point. Whenever we think about milk, we are thinking about the liquid milk. Really 99.9% of milk is used as liquid milk. But in other countries, only 50% of milk is used as liquid milk. The whole milk is going to the cheese market or butter market. So butter and cheese, that's why Korean became a success. So this is not a question of milking, this is breeding, and this is not selling liquid milk, you can make milk products. And last point is about our poor buffalo. What Korean did, really Korean did not breed any cows. He made, what is his invention? What was his innovation? Buffalo milk. Malayalis are thinking that Korean supported cows in Gujarat. No. Innovation of Korean was pertinent. He proved the world that from the buffalo milk, milk powder can be produced, isn't it? That was the innovation. And cheese also. And he is competing with the Nestle or any other international company. So our buffalo population is very low. So there is a high market for buffalo milk. So this Murray buffalo, which was sold for 25 lakhs, you have to see it in your YouTube. I have no time to show you. It was walking like a catwalk through a ramp. You have to see it in if you have time, you can see the YouTube. With shining skin, shaven and polished like anything. Just like a beauty walking through the ramp. And it had this like this, not like this. So it knows that she is very important. So these buffaloes are sold for 25 lakhs. So this is a big business opportunity. I'm not talking anything more. I have taken more time, I think. Shivadas Menon is restless. Thank you very much for listening to me.
I'll tell you, I'm very unhappy that I'm not able to give you more time. We would like to listen to you, certainly another day. And in fact, I studied in Anand. And long back, of course, Dr. Kurian was supposed to be my guardian. And and recently, before it was 5 years back, I met him in Colombo airport. I told him, sir, why you're not coming to Kerala? The problem with Kerala is there are a lot of Malayalis. I don't want to come. He said, Chandrika called me to set up a Amul there in Sri Lanka. That's the reason I'm there. Chandrika Kumaratanke. In English, he doesn't speak in Malayalam. And export, what he said is correct. They're totally out of the box thinking. It's not the milk and milk products alone. It's the breeding and good cattle, good variety. Huge opportunity for export. Now Doha is coming up in a big way. They require 84,000 rooms, hotel rooms within 10 years. This is an opportunity. So they require a lot of milk, a lot of meat. Look into that. And what Mr. John said, I said Chinese don't drink milk. I think they send all the milk, incorporate milk powder, incorporating melamine. Melamine along with that, which creates cancer in your stomach. Thank you, sir. And thank you very much for your very informative.
Thank you very much, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, Mr. Harikrishnan Nair, is the Managing Director of WICC, which is a cashew processing company which imports raw cashew nuts from African countries and supplies processed cashews and cashew food ingredients to snack food companies in America, the UK, Europe, Australia, Japan and India. Mr. Harikrishnan Nair has been a member of Kerala State Council of the CII since 1996 and has served on regional and national committees for agribusiness and membership. He is chairman of the subcommittee for packaging of the Cashew Export Promotion Council of India. He has been a speaker at the annual conventions, the International Tree Nut Council, and the Peanut and Tree Nut Processors Association. Thank you. And may I request Mr. Harikrishnan Nair for his presentation.
Good morning, all of you. Dignitaries on and off the dais. It's my pleasure to talk to you about food today. I thought I'll talk about trends, because that's a topic we started off with. But then, after listening to the presentations yesterday, I thought I'll add something about my company and how we have actually sort of used the trends. Now, if you look at food, I think the world population is growing very, very fast, and the requirement of food. There is going to be a shortage of food in the future. So anybody who's in the food industry, you know that there is space there, and there is space to grow. But what type of food? When you look at it, the growth in population is not happening in the developed countries. Even in India and China, the growth will plateau in the next 10 years. The growth is actually happening in less developed countries like Africa. And the food which they eat is different from the food which we eat, and what we eat is different from the food which is eaten in Europe and America. There are changes which actually happens because of incomes. In the last 25 years, the consumption of meat and proteins in China, because of the increase in per capita income from about $4,000 odd to something like $16,000, the consumption of meat, milk, poultry, etc., has actually increased by a factor of 8 to 12. And this is something which will probably happen in India too in the future. So, the takeaway which I want you to have from this is that, firstly, the food which we eat in the future is going to be different from the food which we eat now. And as people in the food industry, anybody who wants to get into the food industry, it is good to actually think about that. So there's two sides. On one side, there is going to be food requirement for the bottom of the pyramid. That is, on the carbohydrate side, food security, etc., which I think the government is looking after on one side. I think with the new bill, etc., and being able to supply to the government for this. And on the other side, there's this thing of value added. That is, in America, for example, the per capita consumption of food has not increased in the last 40 or 50 years. But the per capita consumption in value terms has increased because people buy $1.50 worth of cornflakes instead of the same, plain cornflakes, which is worth $1. So that's the difference which happens, and that's what food companies do. What's also pertinent is that the large food companies worldwide are actually from Europe and America. You look at Nestle, you look at Mondelez or Kraft, you look at any of these big groupings, they're mainly from Europe and America. And they don't have space to grow in their countries. And they're actually going and using processes which they have in countries like India, China. So that's one of the reasons why we have large food companies coming into India and investments coming into India too. So here, the basic change which happens from carbohydrates to proteins and fat is pertinent, and you also look at urbanization. When urbanization also increases the consumption of meat, fish, dairy, and fruits, etc. Now, if you look at the base trends in India, this is most of this data is from a FICCI event earlier this year. The food sector in India is approximately $135 billion now, and it is growing at 10 to 12% per annum. And 10 to 12% per annum is dependent on the the growth in the economy over the next 2 years. And what is happening now? The factors which are important now is logistics, processing, and compliance. Logistics, because of the changes which are happening now, and what is grown in one place is not eaten just there; it is actually grown for the whole country, etc. Processing, because of the change which has happened. You look at fruit and vegetable processing. The amount of fruit processed has grown from is at about 2%, was about 2% in 2010, and it is likely to grow to 35% in the next 15 years. And the value-added as a percentage of the product which is going into value added is 8%, and it is likely to go to 35% in 2025. Compliance, because of the new rules which have come under the FSSAI, which is the Safety and Food Standards and Safety Authority of India, and the Food Security Act, which changes dynamics. I mean, today you have, you're likely to have rice being sold at, being given at 2 rupees or 1.5 rupees, where somebody was telling me that feed costs 6 rupees to 8 rupees. So this is a change which we'll have to live with in the future. Now, when you look at consumer trends which are driving brands in Europe and America, and which are likely to come to India, the first thing which is happening is ultra convenience. It is not convenience anymore, it is ultra convenience. That is, earlier, you would have, a packet, a lot of Indian packaged foods, you can't open the packet. You'll have to actually bite it open. Now, in Europe, it is not just being able to open it. You have to be able to open it with one hand, because when you're driving, you don't want to take your hand off the steering. You may be eating your food or a snack when you're driving. So that's the type of change in convenience which is happening today. It's just an example from packaging. The second thing is on health and wellness. Health and wellness is different in different places, different for different people. Weight management has always been important. Heart disease is a major problem, and reduction of salt and sugar is something which people try to do in food now. And digestive health, that is, you're talking of adding fiber to food or adding probiotics into food, etc., to increase digestion. So these are changes which are actually happening in health and wellness. So, you have fiber, like I mentioned before, low glycemic, which is suitable for, diabetics, and also it actually keeps your weight down. Satiety, that is, feed a food which makes you feel satisfied. For example, I'm in the nuts business. They say that if you eat nuts, you feel satisfied, so you don't eat more of other food. Then, then you have salt and sugar replacers. You have now ways of adding other additives into food so that you don't feel the lack of salt or sugar. But at the same time, it is lower in salt and sugar. So this is how things are changing in the processed food. The next is clean label. Clean label means that a label does not have 30 or 40 items written on it. You reduce the number of ingredients in a food so that the consumer is looking at the ingredients. Consumer wants to know, the things which are going into what he or she eats. Free from. People want food which is free from oil. Some people want free stuff which is free from milk because of allergies. Then some people want food which is free of something or the other, including nuts, peanuts, etc., because of allergies. Then resveratrol, iron, vitamin E. I mean, these are things which, if you have these things in a food, it is considered very, very healthy. And the other thing which is happening on the health and wellness side is natural, that is less processed, whole grain, which is actually going back to older products. I mean, I think ragi and different types of older grains are likely to become healthy for use in processed food. Then you have functional food and superfood. I mean, functional food, you're talking of things which are healthy and are particularly healthy for particular diseases, etc. Superfood is certain things. For example, almonds are today considered a superfood, because you eat. People say that apple at one time was considered to be a very healthy thing. Today, almonds, pomegranates. Then you have something called goji berries, which grows in the Himalayas. You have some of these things which are considered to be superfood. So you add a little bit of that into your food, and you can charge a higher price for the food. So this is something which is happening in the food thing. Jackfruit, yes, of course. Then you have complexities which are happening in food. You make food for different age, people of different age, gender, income, lifestyle, etc. But it is not just that anymore. You have, young people who want to feel older. You have older people who want to feel younger. You have, people who are not that rich, but who want to eat food which, they think rich people eat. Then you have lifestyles. You have so there are different things. People who are completely sedentary, they want to eat the type of food which they think that outdoor people eat. So you have, these are complexities which are happening in marketing of foods, and and the way food is positioned. Then you have sensory. People today, I think, want, food which is from different places. You have Italian food at one time became very popular all over the world. Chinese after that. Indian became popular in the UK. Today, you have international foods becoming popular even in India. And, you have, it's not just Indian food. Today, you're talking of Kerala food being popular in particular places, or it's not just French food. It is food from Tuscany or very regional places, authentic, etc. These are things which are becoming important in food overseas. Umami is a word which is used for one of the different tastes. You have sweet, sour, salty, and bitter as the basic taste, basic flavors. And umami is a word which is used for something which is an enhancer. Typically, you have MSG, monosodium glutamate, which actually increases the taste of anything. So you have certain things which are naturally there with umami. For example, they say that some types of cheese has umami. Some types of yeast produces products with umami. Then you have grape, wine. These things are supposed to have some amount of umami. So what they're trying to do now is use umami to reduce salt or reduce sugar. So you have yeast extracts being used, as a small additive so that you can reduce salt by 25% or 30%, etc. Comfort foods. Comfort foods is something, chocolate, for example, is considered a comfort food. You eat that because, when you feel happy or you want to celebrate, minor celebrations is when you eat comfort food. Then you have niche flavors, like I mentioned. And the next is posh. Posh is different from premium. Premium means very high, very expensive. Posh is something which, because of the slowdown which has happened and income levels are coming down. People want it to be posh. At the same time, they don't want to pay that much for it. So this is something which is happening, across the world in food today. And the last is connectivity. Connectivity means when you eat your food, food is a major part of anybody's spending. And when you eat your food, you want to connect with people. You want to know that you're helping people in different places. You want to know that, I'm eating halal food, or I'm eating a kosher food, or fair trade. Fair trade means that there is no exploitation for supply of the food, etc. And there are different ethical labels which are happening on food now. So these things are also becoming very important in developed countries in the food.
What is kosher?
Kosher is it is suitable for the Jewish diet. So today, you want food which is, low calorie, all natural, local grown, gluten free, whole food with minimal packaging. And there's a guy without a job saying that I'm willing to work for any of these things. And in India, what's happening is that, it's that the trends match what is there internationally, but there are different trends which are happening in India too. One is the income growth which has happened in India in the last 10 years. It may slow down, it has slowed down a little bit, but at the same time, the trend continues. It is not going to fall off immediately. It will probably continue for some more time. Now, people want international foods. You have pizzas coming in. You have pasta. You have so many, people want international labels. Imported food is selling a lot in India today. Apples with stickers on it from different places, etc., etc. And premium, of course. That is something which, from our side, we sell cashews. So the Indian market, people are eating cashews because when they were small, they thought it was premium. When they were younger, when they couldn't afford it many years ago. And there's increased usage of sweets. This is something which has happened because under Indian custom, it is something where you use Indian sweets a lot for any event. But today, it is not one small piece which you eat. It is maybe 4 or 5 jalebis or whatever which people are eating. When the number of occasions is increasing when you celebrate like this, the number of people you call or you give sweets to is increasing tremendously. Dairy is increasing, meat is increasing in India. And the second thing is snacking. Snacking is something which is not a full meal. Snacking is something which you eat between meals, or you eat at events when you're not sitting in family together or eating a meal. Snacking is actually increasing in India tremendously against a full meal. And this is something which has happened in the West also. Today I think in the West you don't have, the evening dinner is the only real meal. And I think a lot of people don't go out for lunch. They have maybe 2 or 3 snacks instead. They sit in the office and have 2 or 3 snacks. And this is happening in India also. Eating out is actually increasing against home meals. And this is something which you see in Cochin. I mean, you see the number of new restaurants which are there today compared to what we had a few years ago. And the types of, so that gives rise to different types of eating places. Places where you go for a quick meal, a cheap meal. When you're driving, a lot of people are vegetarian because they don't want to get a stomach upset. So, and you go to a different type of a restaurant. There's some places you go to celebrate, or when you're taking your clients out, you go to a different type of place. So it's in some places, again, you have Chinese, you have, a fixed menu, you have what do you call it, the buffets. These are all different types of restaurants which are actually happening, and all this actually takes away from packaged food. So these are trends which are happening actually in India. Cooking ingredients is something where a lot of packaged food has actually done well from Kerala. You have spices. Kerala is home of spices, and a lot of brands from Kerala have actually developed on the basis of cooking ingredients. Now, cooking ingredient at home, I mean, people still cook at home, but at one time they used raw spices. You would take a chili and grind it. From that, it has moved to a packed chili. From that, it is moving to ready to cook chili. Maybe it is mixed chili. And from that, it is likely to move to ready to eat. That is, you just take the product and, you buy parotas today. Ready-made parotas available, which you just take in microwave and eat it. So this is a movement which will take place because of the need for convenience in India. And this is something which is happening across, the food sector in India.
Food sandwiches also.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, but so these are I mean, I'm talking about these trends because these are trends as entrepreneurs which you can pick on. You don't need to pick on all of this, but you pick on 1 or 2, and that is probably enough to actually give you the edge, to make your product successful. The other thing which has happened is modern retail. Modern retail, what it has done for the food industry is that expectations are different today. Earlier, you go to a shop and you buy something. If something is wrong, you will not bother to complain because that guy won't do anything for you. But today, if you buy something from a modern retail which has got a name, if there's a problem, you'll go and return it because that's a big guy. You buy it from a Reliance, and if you eat something, it's got a bad taste or somebody gets a stomach upset, you will go back and complain. And the expectations are different. You will not pick up a rotten, banana from a slightly rotten banana from a shop, from these shops. They will have to remove all those things every day, try to make sure that what is kept on the shelf is good quality. So these differences have happened because the expectations of quality and has gone up, the expectation of freshness has gone up, and the expectation of variety has gone up. Now you don't, you go to a shop, if you don't get everything you want, you will tell other people that everything is not there. There's not enough variety in this place. And you go to a different supermarket. So they will keep variety. So that's an opportunity to produce variety and offer that in the, in the supermarkets. And what has also happened is that, these modern retail, it has made shopping one stop. Earlier, you would go to a butcher for something, you will go to fresh food market for, vegetable market for something else, and you'll go to a general merchant for rice. Now you go to one place and do everything together and one bill. So it has become one-stop place where you buy product and loose product, where you buy branded product plus local product. Everything is bought in one place. So this is a change which is happening, and it is actually going forward. Yeah. So But what is also done is that it has created, I think diseases in India are going up because of the food. I'll have some heart disease with blood pressure and diabetes with a side of clogged arteries and tooth decay. So what this does is that, it brings, in the industry, we have international players and brands which have come here, and brands which are moving from local to regional and to national footprints, and different types of chain which have come here. And these are trends which are happening from the industry side. You have mechanization of the food processes. You have internationalization of Indian foods. You have, for example, this pav bhaji, goli, whatever they were talking about. It is actually internationalization. They've taken a local product and made it international with things added to it. And then you have strengthening of back-end linkages and third-party logistics and development. These are movements which are happening from the industry side in the, in the food sector. Now, in Kerala, I think specifically when you look at it, it has been an export base for spices, cashews, and seafood. Now, from this base, there's opportunities for value addition and also a separate opportunity for development of the Indian and local market. Also, you have cassava, coconut, jackfruit, banana, etc. And the products is not fully developed in India, and that is an opportunity which some of us have looked to take, and it's an opportunity which is available. The other side of it is that Kerala has a very internationally exposed market, because of the linkages with the Gulf. And it's a lab for introducing new food into India. And brands from here can extend to the Middle East, etc. So I'll just go through something very quickly about my business. We've been in the cashew business for some time. And this is a graph which shows what's on the top is the export of cashew in tons from India. And what's at the bottom is the export of value-added cashews from India. You look at it, it is not flat, but when you look at it at the beginning, but it's very, very small. It was less than 0.5%, and now it's about 2%. What we did, at one time is that we wanted to, so these are goals which we set for our company about 3 to 4 years ago, and I'll just show you how it has actually resulted, on the value-added side. So this is the export of value-added cashews in the last 5 to 6 years. And the bar on the right is what my company has done. So it's fair to say that we actually developed the category of value-added exports from India. When we started into it, it was very, very small. And it was very difficult actually to find, the customer for a retail pack is different from a customer from a bulk pack. And it was very, very difficult when we started off in 2005. But after 2010 level, we've really moved into it, and we've been able to do this very well. And what we've also done in our company is that, you look at that big graph there in the beginning, on the left is raw cashews. We used to import raw cashews from Africa and also supply it to people here in India. That we are actually getting out of. The second is plain cashews, which is the normal cashew export. That also we are reducing significantly. The third, the orange color, is value-added cashews supplied both India and overseas. That is something which we are growing significantly. And the last one is other nuts, which we got into, which goes along with the cashews, and that's something which we are growing. So in the last a few years, what we have done is we've managed to acquire private label global customers, and our export of value-added cashews touched 45 crores, which was much, much higher than India's export of value-added cashews 2 years ago. And we've been, US FDA inspected. We've set up distribution and product development capabilities in the US. We've hired very good people overseas to be able to do this. Now we are 85% value-added and 35% from non-cashew, and we are on track to grow on that line. That's a line in which we're doing. And we managed to do this by refocusing our business, taking on from one to the other, and having a team of very, very good people. So this is how we have actually managed to do this, and we are actually been able to work on some of the trends which I have mentioned before. I hope you'll be able to, do something with this. I just kept this here because just a few days ago, there was this result of a study from Harvard which came out, which which says that, that in the future, like an apple a day, people will be talking about eating nuts a day. This is something which is likely to happen because it's a very, very big study of 120,000 people over 30 years, which says that people who eat nuts are likely to live longer. And this is something which has come very, very recently, just two weeks ago. So we expect that this is something which will take our industry far forward in the next few years. And we intend to grow with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hari. Sorry that I could not give you more time. And opportunities are plenty. In fact, in Kerala itself now, the state government has taken initiative in setting up greenhouses in the state. Now already 650 greenhouses are ready. There's going to be 3,000 greenhouses. So that means we will be able to eat good vegetables without pesticides, what's coming from the neighboring states, our own vegetables, and value addition possible. Apart from nuts and other food products, the opportunity for value addition, dehydrated vegetables, and all that. I don't want to sum up, I don't have time to sum up. So few question answers, we can take maximum 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, more than 1,000 meter, where you will get the cool period for this flower induction. It will have a 14 to 18 degrees temperature, and this more or less 1 week time for flower induction. Will go for this strawberry cultivation. I will add some points for this about this question. If you see the floriculture, vegetable and strawberry, the floriculture we have this tissue culture hardened plants that can be supplied to all over India by air, by train, and by road also, according to convenience. And that is well packed in the boxes, and those are we are conducting like this, and last 20 years we are in that business. For vegetables, we have the seeds and seedlings also. So where there is a market or the grower is distantly located, we can send the seeds, they can grow their seedlings at their own farm, and they can use those plants in a
That's a big business. In fact, get seeds here, make it, in a nursery you can make it to plants. Huge business. Nursery business.
And you supply the gherkins?
Not so much, but if anyone requires, we can supply those seeds of the gherkins and plant seeds to the farmers. Because we have that in our assortment. With the company we are working right zone from Holland.
Just trying to stand on our legs. Only last year we introduced greenhouse. Experiments can be the cost is improving fast. It's improving fast. You will have almost 3,000 greenhouses by next year. And greenhouse or polyhouse? It's something the same. We call it as greenhouse, and the other one is net house.
There are 3 types actually, what we call as a fully controlled, semi-controlled, and the natural ventilated. So all these farmers where we supply the plants, those are having the naturally ventilated polyhouses. And with that, we can control the humidity to some extent, the temperature, and the other conditions. Because we have the top shade net, we have the plastic on the roof. With the help of that, we can take a year-round production. And the shade net also along all sides. Also, we can go for the shade net house, where we can take the vegetable production.
The subsidy is available.
Some more questions after that we have enough time.
What is your pest control protocol?
Sorry?
What is your pest control protocol? Is it traditional pesticide?
No, we combine all. We combine all chemicals. First, we take the consider these polyhouse operations, then monitoring, the chemical, organic also. With the help of that, we can control all the pest and disease occurring in a polyhouse.
Question to
Mr. Johnson.
C.B. Johnson. It's a fantastic idea what you have given of propagating cattle and having a cattle ranch sort of thing. The problem what we are facing is we have the land, but we can't use the land for this. We have land in Pyramid area, which is uneconomic tea. Being from the government, if we can use it for economic purposes.
I'll ask a related question, not my previous submission. Now, Mr. Sri John spoke about refarming and depersonalization. I totally agree with you. This is happening, and Kerala has become almost an urban state, if you even go by statistics. But then, as you said, the problem is we still have some land which is totally unusable. And apart from the category he was trying to refer to, we have so much of fallow land, so-called paddy lands, which cannot be, which we can't even use for horticulture, floriculture, or anything else. Why can't we have at least one rule which brings in the use of these so-called paddy lands, which grow only wheats these days, that they can have at least horticulture and floriculture? I think that would make available a large expanse of land for some of these things.
My name is Devidas Sajnani. I am coming from Maharashtra, Mumbai. We are actually thinking of the cattle breeding, and we want to go for agriculture in a big way all over India. My question is that, what about the land, which we have been talking about? Is the land going to be available from the government side on these basis, or we will be allowed to buy such agricultural land here so that we can start this cattle breeding and we can start the farming of horticulture?
What is your standard size?
We are actually hiring technicians.
No, the size about.
It will be big sizes. We are talking about 500 acres to 1,000 acres, or at least a minimum 100-acre land. So we'll be getting the land on leasehold basis, or we don't mind buying also, or we don't mind getting the land on leasehold basis from the government. But we want to do, because already we are going to start the in Maharashtra for goat farming and cattle. So we want to come out with breeding, cattle breeding, and we want to come for farming also. But we
got it.
Maharashtra, can we come down to?
I got it. There are 2 questions, 3 questions. One is about the land
They have, and what to do with their land in the highland. Of course, we have permitted, we are trying to permit 5%, and I was behind it. Interestingly, Chief Minister told me to draft the note from the planning board, and it is circulated several times through the complex tubes of Secretariat. It has not come out yet, but I hope within few months or few weeks it will come out. In that sector, we are proposing this dairy. But for the dairy sector, there is another problem which I didn't mention. It is a question of pollution. Pollution Control Board steps in on the moment when you breed more than 5 cows. Or yes, so we are talking to the Pollution Control Board also. Put a do's and don'ts list. Don't go to a cow shed just like you're going to a red category industry. Now it is an orange. Orange and red is neighbors. So this is another threat for dairies thing. And as he said, of course, we can do it. And interestingly, as far as the buffaloes are concerned, people are buying buffaloes from Tamil Nadu. And even with foot and mouth disease, there is another story to tell. Then putting it in the fallow land. These buffaloes, they need no sheds. They live in the fallow land, especially in Malappuram district, Trichy district and Palakkad district, where buffalo meat is in high demand. They just keep it. Buffaloes are not bothered about rain and shine or shower. Pardon? Yes, weeds are good. So my point is that weeds can be converted into fodder. So you just make fodder farms and put this buffalo inside, and you can grow it. And interestingly, this business, this greenhouse, we call it polyhouse. Greenhouse is little more complex, I think. Technically, or you call it?
Generally, it is known as greenhouses.
But as far as we are concerned, we say that it's polyhouse.
Polyhouse is the type, the material where you use the polyhouse, the glass house where they use the glass as a material.
No, greenhouse is little more complex, is it?
No, when you go for the fully controlled.
Correct, correct. So we need not that kind of controls. We can have a semi this thing. And as a gentleman from Maharashtra said, it is very difficult for us to buy 100 acres even for an airport. So the point is, no, it will not be economically viable to buy 100 acres and to buy do cattle business. Instead, you have enough space here. You can take land on lease. You can cooperate with farmers and rubber cultivators or some people. I think it will be a better model other than buying land.
Any specific questions can be discussed outside the thing, and I am under pressure for the time. And thank you very much. And
may I request moderator Shivadas Menon sir to hand over a memento to our speakers. As a token of gratitude, sir, kindly hand over a memento to Mr. C.P. John, Member Planning Board, Government of Kerala. Thank you very much, sir. Now please hand over a memento to Mr. Kiran Diokar, Technical Manager, KF Bioplants Private Limited. And finally to Mr. Harikrishna Nair, Charter Member, TiE Kerala, and the Managing Director of WICC. Thank you very much, sirs.